Carrying on with our home photography setup, we are, of course, today going to talk about pet photography. That's right. It's time to photograph our fluffy friends. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday, we bring you a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. Now today, we're actually going to talk about pet photography. So whether you're taking photos of a dog, a cat, a hamster, a guinea pig, or something less fluffy, maybe a lizard. I can't think of any other pets that wouldn't be fluffy. Maybe a bird? I guess that's feathery, not fluffy. But whatever it is you want to take a photo of, we're going to go over some tips for how you can capture that. Of course, we're all stuck inside at the moment, so all of these photos are going to be around the house and a little bit in the garden as well, because if you've got the use of that, that can be a nice way to get a little bit of an outdoor theme going as well. Now we're going to talk about lighting, we're going to talk about composition, we're going to talk about general kind of tips and tricks as well as focusing in on focusing, because actually, for me at least, and I'll explain why, that's been one of the harder parts of this whole thing. So first things first, let's talk about kind of a setup that you might go for. Now I'm using the Sony a7 III and the a7R4, and I'm using a couple of different lenses. I'm actually trying out the 85mm G Master lens, which is a great portrait lens, therefore should make a great lens for pet photography, but it can be difficult to work with quite a shallow depth of field when photographing your fluffy friends, because they're not always as well behaved as a human. Sometimes though they are more well behaved than a human, so we'll have to see. But I'm also using a 24-70 f2.8 and a 35mm f1.4 as well. Now in terms of setup, we're trying a few different locations. Obviously we're stuck in the house and the garden, so we're trying the sofa, we're trying in the actual dog bed as well, trying on our bed of course, and we're trying out in the garden as well, and trying out a few different lighting setups and different things like that. Now it goes without saying that in terms of lighting, your best option is going to be to take photographs near to a window. That natural light is going to be nice and soft, it's going to be diffused coming through the window, it's going to look great, and it's going to give you a very easy light to work with when photographing your pet. Now my pet, my dog, Pepsi is his name, has got dark fur and dark eyes. Brilliant. So it makes it a little bit extra difficult to actually get a well-exposed photo, because everything just goes into this kind of dark, fluffy mess. He's also a little bit overdue a groom, so, he's not looking his absolute smartest, but, with the lockdown, we work with what we have. Some people also say he looks a little bit like me, although I don't know what they're talking about. So let's start off with the sofa photo. So we've got him on the sofa, we've got natural light coming through the window, and we're able to just snap a photo. The light is nice and soft and diffused, so that works well, kind of falling onto him. We don't get harsh shadows, and I've gone for an overall fairly low contrast image. Now, let's change that to a different setup that we went for. This is actually on, believe it or not, on our kitchen counter. We put a rug down so he would feel more comfortable, and of course for hygiene reasons. And we've just got his dog bed on the actual kitchen counter on this rug as well. And then we've just got a bit of black card behind him. Now, I went for a bit of black card so that we've got kind of black on black, so that the color, if I used a colored bit of card behind, it might have overtaken the whole photo. So I've gone black on black, which I think works well, but this is almost more like a studio setup. Now, I've actually set up one single continuous light just off to the side. So again, not using flash because I don't want to scare him, just using a continuous light. It's not hot, and it's actually just working really well just to light him up. I'm using a relatively fast aperture so that I can get a good amount of light in, but shooting between f2.8 and f4 so that I've got enough depth of field to actually get all of the detail that I want to get, and also just to give me a little bit of room for error when it comes to focusing on the eyes, but still getting a little bit of fall off as the focus point starts to move back and things like that. You still get a little bit of that blurred background. Now, like I said, I'm just using the one light off to the side, and the main way that I'm actually getting him to look at the camera is I'm just placing a little treat, in this case, a little bone treat on top of the lens. So he's not looking at the camera, he's not looking at me, he's not doing anything that I want him to do, he's looking at the treat and waiting to get that. But that's a great way, basically bribery. It's a great way to get your dog to focus on the lens, no pun intended, so that you can actually get that kind of straight on shot. Now this looks a little bit like a studio kind of portrait, but it's just done on my kitchen, rug on the kitchen counter, black bit of card, one continuous light. Whole setup probably cost no more than £40 in total, and it was all stuff I just had anyway as a photographer, as a videographer. Now obviously your dog, your cat, or anything else you want to photograph is not always going to do exactly what you want it to do when it comes to photos. It's going to be more difficult to pose them or to get them to do things. So sometimes it is about patience, about setting up in a situation where they feel comfortable, so they're not going to try and get away. So for example, when we started, my dog definitely thought we were going to try and give him a bath, which absolutely he was not going to be a part of. So he was trying to run away, but he soon realized that we were just kind of hanging out. You know, he doesn't maybe know we're taking photos, but it's absolutely fine. And once he was comfortable, he would sit in one position. And then it's a case of waiting. You know, you can do things like the bone trick on top of the lens to try and get him to look at the lens. But otherwise, sometimes it's just a case of hanging around and waiting to see what happens. Sometimes they'll do something a little bit cute, even if they scratch their ear, or if you have a toy with them, they might start playing with that, or they might go into a cute position and stick out their tongue or anything like that at all. So sometimes it's about patience just as much as it is about the setup. You want to make sure that you're there ready when they do something interesting or cute or funny, so you can snap that moment. Now in that sense, I was using autofocus for all of this so that I could just snap on. I mentioned before I was using a relatively fast aperture, but I wasn't really going much faster than f2.8, and a lot of the time I was shooting f4 as well. And that's because with my dog in particular, you know, he's got a very fluffy face, there's a lot of hair in front of his eyes, but much like a human portrait, I want to focus on his eyes, which is difficult. He's also got dark fur and dark eyes, which makes it extra challenging. So even though I'm using a Sony a7 III and an a7R4, which have animal eye autofocus, it was working pretty about half the time. And the other half of the time, there was just too much hair in front of his eyes. The whole thing was too dark and it just wasn't picking that up. So I was having to then go in, I was using spot focus to actually just pop a little square over where his eye would be. But that can also be tricky as well. So the best thing I found to do with this was having the actual grid guide on the actual rear screen and obviously the electronic viewfinder as well. I was able to pop the little square for focus either on the top right or the top left intersection where the lines kind of cross. And that way I knew that all I had to do was point the camera, point that part of the camera, of the focus, at his eye, which is probably what I would be doing anyway, and I would always be able to get the focus on his eye. Now, sometimes it doesn't work because of the hair, it would focus on the hair instead of his eye, but by using an aperture like f4 and giving myself a little bit of a deeper depth of field, I was actually allowing a little bit of a room for error when photographing like a portrait. So I was still, even if it was focusing on the hair in front of his eye, I was still getting enough of a depth of field there that it was absolutely fine. Now we also shot outside as well in the garden where we took some photos, and essentially it was exactly the same thing. I got him set up in one area that he likes to sit in, which is actually under this tree near some daisies, and essentially just used the treats again so that he would look at the camera and just snap the photos. Just wait for him to do something interesting or cute or funny and snap away. We did also pick him up. He actually likes to smell the flowers. He likes to smell the blossom on the tree and the flowers around the garden. So we picked him up so he could smell the blossom, and that made for a great photo as well. You know, and that's another thing that is really key. If there's any quirks that your pets have, so for example, mine likes to smell the flowers, that can make for a really cute photo and also a really nice moment to capture. But anything else that they like to do, if they've got, like I said earlier in the video, if they've got a favorite toy, that can be great to photograph them with their favorite toy or in their favorite position or wherever they like to sleep. You know, they don't always have to be doing something super exciting, but if they've got a little quirk that shows off their personality, that is going to be a huge thing for the photo. That's going to really make it, and especially it's going to make it special for you as well. Now we've just really skimmed the surface of kind of pet photography and things like that, and really this is a very makeshift setup. You know, I'm talking about doing this with basically what you have in the house. You know, we can't set things up, I can't grab anything from the office or anything like that. So it's really just doing this with what you have. So a lot of it is using natural light, a lot of it is using kind of props that you might already have in the house and actually relying on your dog or cat or whatever doing something quite interesting, funny or cute. So there's an interesting way to do it, but if you have any tips yourself, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. Any further tips to get some great pet photos, pop them down there. I'd love to hear it. Any questions, of course, pop them down there as well. I'll do a full list of all the kit that I use down in the description so you can go and check that out for yourselves as well. Of course, we had a video yesterday all about getting creative with different things in the house. We've got other photos, we've got other videos about home photography setups and different projects that you can try around the home, and It doesn't look like we're going anywhere anytime soon, so I guess we'll be doing a lot more in the coming days, weeks, and of course, months. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of that. Make sure to give the video a like as well if you enjoyed it. That always helps me out. I will, of course, see you in the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.